Good morning, everyone. This weekend's the second Sunday in Advent, and this Sunday and next Sunday we have a very specific main character in the Gospels. The church gives him to us every year, the second and third Sunday of Advent. And of course, that person is St. John the Baptist. So he must be significant. The fact that the church gives him to us every year at this time. And in fact, it goes right along with St. John the Baptist's entire job, which his whole job is to get people ready for Jesus. It's kind of like whenever you have some big event, you usually have some lead up to it. You know, if you go to a concert, you've always got the big main event, the main band that you're going to see, but then you have all the small local bands or whatever that sort of like get you in the mood, build you up to the main event. Or like comedians, they do the same sort of thing. You have like the smaller local comedians, they get you ready, build you up for the main event. Or if you have like some important person coming, there's always the entourage that comes before them that gets ready for them. It gets us in the proper mood to receive the person for who they really are. You know, if the President of the United States didn't have all of the Marines and all of the Secret Service agents running around, and then the Hail to the Chief that gets played right before he walks out, we would lose something. All of that is done to prepare you and me to receive him for who he really is, this person in this great, grand position. John the Baptist is the ultimate for preparing us for the coming of Jesus. He, in fact, Jesus says himself, he is the greatest of anyone who's lived in the Old Testament. He's the fulfillment of all of the prophets in the Old Testament, who are all pointing to Christ, but it all gets summed up in John the Baptist. If you go to Europe, or if you ever see all the traditional Christian imagery, John the Baptist is you can usually pick him out for one of two things, or both. One, he's holding a staff that says, Ecce agnus Dei qui tollis peccata mundi. Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. That's his line. That's his line in the gospel. And in fact, he still prepares you and me every time we receive the Eucharist with that same line. When the priest turns around, or when the priest faces the people, holds up the chalice and the Eucharist, the host, and says, Behold the Lamb of God, behold him who takes away the sins of the world. That's John the Baptist. Those are his words, preparing us for we're about to receive Jesus. So either it's that, or he is pointing to Jesus. He's always, and the Renaissance artists especially, they always have like subtle ways that he's doing this. Like if you go to Rome and you go to St. Peter's Basilica, on the facade of the basilica at the top is Jesus, a giant statue of Jesus, and then all of his apostles to the left and the right of him. But there's one additional guy that they sneak in there. It's John the Baptist. John the Baptist is standing, just as we're looking at it, just to the left of Jesus. It's just to Jesus' right. And he's holding the staff that says, Ecce agnus Dei. And then he's like pointing at Jesus, kind of in this weird motion, like over his head. But basically, his job, he's fulfilling his job. He is always pointing at Christ. He's always getting us ready for Christ. And how does he say we have to do that? Basically, it's summed up in one line that we hear in today's gospel. It's a twofold motion. Turn away from sin, be faithful to the gospel. Apparently, if we are to receive Jesus properly, and if we are to receive everything Jesus wants to give to us, we have to undergo this twofold preparation. Turn away from sin and be faithful to the gospel. And so this actually connects really well to what we talk about a lot in Lent, and we don't always talk about a ton in Advent, but the church says Advent is like a mini version of Lent. And that is, in Lent we talk about the threefold preparation of prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. But these two motions are largely accomplished by fasting, helps us to turn away from sin, and by prayer, helps us to be ready to receive the gospel. And so I think it's worth us praying about and reflecting on today at Mass, how can I fulfill this twofold motion in my life so that I can be ready to receive Jesus? In terms of turning away from sin, there's a couple things in particular that are great to do. One is this thing of fasting. So fasting, it's kind of like, okay, so how does fasting help me to turn away from sin? Fasting accomplishes a very specific role. Fasting is like going to the weight room, going to work out the muscle of my free will. Because our free wills have been weakened by sin. And what that means then is when the temptation comes along, the sin that I struggle with, the thing that I'm always falling into, I have a quick temper in such and such a situation, or I always struggle in being patient with so-and-so, or I always fall into this kind of sin of the flesh, whether it's of the flesh or drinking or whatever it might be. This or that sin, I'm always weak when the temptation comes along. The distance between me being tempted and then me falling into that sin is very short. And I just sort of slip right into it every time. Well, what that is it's a weakness of our will. We have a weak will that struggles to say no when the allure of that temptation arises in my life. And so a great way to be ready, to strengthen my will, to be able to have the ability to say no to that temptation when it arises, I have to go through the work now of strengthening my will. And that's accomplished through fasting. Just like an athlete wouldn't be ready out on the field if they didn't go to the weight room, do tons of working out ahead of time. So too, you and I can't expect to be ready to confront temptation, especially temptations to sins that we've struggled with for a long time, unless we go through the work of strengthening our will. And that's what fasting does. Fasting, rightly done, the church says you don't fast from something that you shouldn't have anyway. You know, if I need to, if I need to spend less time on Netflix, because I binge on Netflix episodes all the time. A good fast, I should be watching less Netflix. But a good fast, actually, in the fullness of what the church envisions, is not to give up Netflix. Because I should be giving that up anyway. A good fast is to give up something good that I enjoy, that is okay to enjoy, and that I can expect to enjoy again once I reach the season of feasting, and not be like entering into sin when I do so. A good fast is identifying something in my life that's good, that I enjoy, but that I identify that I'm going to practice giving this thing up. It's like the exercise. It's like saying, I'm going to work at this thing that I know I totally have under control, but is a good that I enjoy, that now I'm going to give up. For me, most recently in the last few months, I'm sure there's many examples of this. One example of this is this newfangled thing that I have no idea where it came from. It must have come straight from heaven, brought down by the angels. These Magnum bars, these ice cream Magnum bars. I don't know if you've discovered them before. They're amazing. We have like these double, triple caramel chocolate something or other. I don't know what it is, but it's got to be straight from heaven or something. But these things are amazing. Perfect thing for me to give up. I enjoy them. I'm not addicted to them. And it's a good thing to just practice now in the evenings when I say I want that thing. I say, no, I don't have to have that thing. For two reasons. One, because I want to exercise my will, strengthen my will's ability to say no to certain things, for my will to practice being in charge. And then secondly, to remind myself that God is the greatest good in my life, and that no good, not even Magnum bars, comes even close to that. And so it's all about a reordering of my life and a strengthening of my will so that I'm ready when that temptation comes to be able to turn away from sin. Another beautiful way of turning from sin is going to confession. And during this year, during COVID, the bishop has asked us not to have any of the normal kind of giant penance services that we've had in the past, out of a desire to obviously to not spread the disease. So Father Waltz, be looking for, Father Waltz and I are talking about, we're going to have extended hours of confession, because it's an old, ancient practice of the church, and it's a beautiful thing during Advent to make sure that we get to confession at some point in our turning away from sin. And then in being faithful to the gospel, it's a good idea to come up with, to pray about, what special kind of prayer practice can I have during Advent? For me, I have never done the consecration of Mary ever before. You know, Father Waltz does it every year. He has a huge devotion to Mary. It's inspiring to me. And so this year I decided to do it. I didn't get my act together when he did back in November, so he's finishing it on December 8th. I'm going to finish it on January 1st. So I just started it last Sunday. But every day I say my little prayers from the consecration book, and then I say the rosary. And I know of no one who's better at preparing her heart for receiving the gospel than Mary. And so in this prayer, I'm asking Mary to help me prepare my heart in the same way that she does. Now, sometimes it seems like these things just feel like checking off boxes, like, oh, boom, checking off the fasting box, boom, checking off the prayer box. And we might say to ourselves, I don't want my life with Christ to be just about checking off boxes. And that's good. That shouldn't be the case. Our life with Christ is a relationship, and it should be that way, a loving relationship. And yet, for you and I, living in space and time, striving to have this relationship with one who right now is unseen for us, who is just beyond the grasp of us being able to see him, it is a good idea to sometimes make certain resolutions, because if we don't, then sometimes that thing can just get lost. In the hustle and bustle of life, before you know it, our desire to be close to Jesus gets pushed aside and shoved away. And if we've made specific, concrete resolutions, it's less likely for that to happen. So today, I encourage you, maybe already you've thought about certain things of fasting and a prayer that you could do for Advent, and maybe not. And so today, once the priest finally stops talking and goes and sits down, and we have some quiet moments, and while he's preparing the altar, and while we're preparing to receive Jesus in the Eucharist, to say a little prayer, say, Lord, I want you in my life more. I want you more in my life. How can I do that? What sorts of things of fasting or of turning away from sin can I concretely do in the coming 3 weeks as I get ready for you coming at Christmas? And what concrete things can I do to invite the gospel into my life in a deeper way? Today, St. John the Baptist is praying for you and me. He is always praying for us, especially though I think this Sunday and next Sunday. So we ask him, St. John the Baptist, prepare our hearts for the coming of Christ. Point out the way for us. Direct us towards him. And show us how to prepare our hearts to receive him at Christmas and to receive him as he desires to come to us today in the Eucharist and every day of our life.